Episode 62. I'm not trying to conceal anything from him. I just don't want you butting in. Harry pressed his ears still more closely against the keyhole. What had happened to make Malfoy speak to Snape like this? Snape, toward whom he had always shown respect, even liking.
So, that is why you have been avoiding me this term. You have feared my interference. You realize that had anybody else failed to come to my office when I had told them repeatedly to be there, Draco.
So put me in detention. Report me to Dumbledore, jeered Malfoy. There was another pause. Then Snape said,
You know perfectly well that I do not wish to do either of those things.
You'd better stop telling me to come to your office then.
Listen to me, said Snape, his voice now so low that Harry had to push his ear very hard against the keyhole to hear. I am trying to help you. I swore to your mother I would protect you. I made the unbreakable vow, Draco.
Looks like you'll have to break it then, because I don't need your protection. It's my job. He gave it to me, and I'm doing it. I've got a plan, and it's going to work. It's just taking a bit longer than I thought it would.
What is your plan?
It's none of your business.
If you tell me what you are trying to do, I can assist you.
I've got all the assistance I need, thanks. I'm not alone.
You were certainly alone tonight, which was foolish in the extreme. Wandering the corridors without lookouts or backup. These are elementary mistakes.
I would have had Crabbe and Goyle with me if you hadn't put them in detention.
Keep your voice down, spat Snape, for Malfoy's voice had risen excitedly. If your friends Crabbe and Goyle intend to pass their defense against the dark arts this time around, they will need to work a little harder than they are doing at present.
What does it matter? Said Malfoy. Defense against the dark arts. It's all just a joke, isn't it? An act? Like any of us need protecting against the dark arts.
It is an act that is crucial to success, Draco, said Snape. Where do you think I would have been all these years if I had not known how to act? Now listen to me. You are being incautious, wandering around at night, getting yourself caught, and if you are placing your reliance in assistants like Crabbe and Goyle...
They're not the only ones. I've got other people on my side. Better people.
Then why not confide in me? And I can...
I know what you're up to. You want to steal my glory. There was another pause. Then Snape said coldly,
You are speaking like a child. I quite understand that your father's capture and imprisonment has upset you, but... Harry had barely a second's warning. He heard Malfoy's footsteps on the other side of the door and flung himself out of the way just as it burst open. Malfoy was striding away down the corridor, past the open door of Slughorn's office, around the distant corner, and out of sight. Hardly daring to breathe, Harry remained crouched down as Snape emerged slowly from the glass room. His expression unfathomable. He returned to the party. Harry remained on the floor, hidden beneath the cloak, his mind racing. Chapter 16. A very frosty Christmas. So Snape was offering to help him? He was definitely offering to help him. If you ask me once more, said Harry, I'm going to stick this sprout. I'm only checking, said Ron. They were standing alone at the Burrows' kitchen sink, peeling a mountain of sprouts for Mrs. Weasley. Snow was drifting past the window in front of them. Yes, Snape was offering to help him, said Harry. He said he'd promised Malfoy's mother to protect him, that he'd made an unbreakable oath or something.
An unbreakable vow? Said Ron, looking stunned. Nah, he can't have. Are you sure? Yes, I'm sure, said Harry. Why, what does it mean? Well, you can't break an unbreakable vow. I'd worked that much out for myself, funnily enough. What happens if you break it then? You die, said Ron simply. Fred and George tried to get me to make one when I was about 5. I nearly did, too. I was holding hands with Fred and everything when Dad found us. He went mental, said Ron, with a reminiscent gleam in his eyes. Only time I've ever seen Dad as angry as Mum. Fred reckons his left buttock has never been the same since. Yeah, well, passing over Fred's left buttock. I beg your pardon, said Fred's voice as the twins entered the kitchen. Ah, George, look at this. They're using knives and everything. Bless 'em. I'll be 17 in 2 and a bit months' time, said Ron grumpily, and then I'll be able to do it by magic. But meanwhile, said George, sitting down at the kitchen table and putting his feet up on it, we can enjoy watching you demonstrate the correct use of a whoops-a-daisy. You made me do that, said Ron angrily, sucking his cut thumb. You wait, when I'm 17. I'm sure you'll dazzle us all with hitherto unsuspected magical skills, yawned Fred. And speaking of hitherto unsuspected skills, Ronald, said George, what is this we hear from Ginny about you and a young lady called, unless our information is faulty, Lavender Brown? Ron turned a little pink, but did not look displeased as he turned back to the Sprouts. Mind your own business. What a snappy retort, said Fred. I really don't know how you think of them. Now, what we wanted to know was, how did it happen? What do you mean? Did she have an accident or something? What? Well, how did she sustain such extensive brain damage? Careful now! Mrs. Weasley entered the room just in time to see Ron throw the sprout knife at Fred, who had turned it into a paper airplane with one lazy flick of his wand. Ron! She said furiously. Don't you ever let me see you throwing knives again. I won't, said Ron. Let you see, he added under his breath, and he turned back to the Sprout Mountain. Fred, George, I'm sorry, dears, but Remus is arriving tonight, so Bill will have to squeeze in with you two. No problem, said George. Then, as Charlie isn't coming home, that just leaves Harry and Ron in the attic, and if Fleur shares with Ginny... That'll make Ginny's Christmas, muttered Fred. Everyone should be comfortable. Well, they'll have a bet anyway, said Mrs. Weasley, sounding slightly harassed. Percy definitely not showing his ugly face, then? Asked Fred. Mrs. Weasley turned away before she answered. No, he's busy, I expect, at the ministry. Or he's the world's biggest prat, said Fred, as Mrs. Weasley left the kitchen. One of the two. Well, let's get going then, George. What are you two up to? Asked Ron. Can't you help us with these sprouts? You could just use your wand and then we'll be free too. No, I don't think we can do that, said Fred seriously. It's very character-building stuff, learning to peel sprouts without magic. Makes you appreciate how difficult it is for muggles and squibs. And if you want people to help you, Ron, added George, throwing the paper airplane at him, I wouldn't chuck knives at them. Just a little hint. We're off to the village. There's a very pretty girl working in the paper shop who thinks my card tricks are something marvelous, almost like real magic. Gates, said Ron darkly, watching Fred and George setting off across the snowy yard. Would have only taken him 10 seconds, and then we could have gone too. I couldn't, said Harry. I promised Dumbledore I wouldn't wander off while I'm staying here. Yeah, said Ron. He peeled a few more sprouts and then said, Are you going to tell Dumbledore what you heard Snape and Malfoy saying to each other? Yep, said Harry. I'm going to tell anyone who can put a stop to it, and Dumbledore's top of the list. I might have another word with your dad, too.